Okay, let's start the stream. Oh my god, I'm a VTuber. What the fuck just happened? Oh my god. This is amazing. No, I've been a VTuber before. This isn't like my first rodeo. Okay, let's get this going. Let's get the our ball of science going behind us, because we're going to be talking about some science here. We're going to be talking about some new atheism, and we're going to be talking about the leaders of the movement and where they're at now. And in Richard Dawkins' case, it's not great. It's not great. All right, so yeah, if you don't know already, Richard Dawkins was retweeting this giant ass TERF manifestos. And chat, you know, I'm just gonna say it. I don't like manifestos. Like, if you're writing a manifesto, you're kind of sus. Unless your name is Karl Marx. Okay, just almost got in trouble there. Almost got in trouble. But no, unless your name is Karl Marx, then, what are you doing writing a manifesto? There's only one manifesto, okay? And if you're against that, then you're not a real Marxist. And you're probably not even a leftist, right? But anyway, yeah, manifestos are sus as fuck, and this is another one that is just way too long. And I think that the reason for the length and the confusingness and the overwhelming nature of this manifesto is so that people won't read it. Because they just want to be like, we've got receipts, look at the receipts, and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of receipts. I believe you. I believe you. That's a lot of receipts, and I'm not going to question. You know what I mean? That's the natural kind of reaction to that sort of thing. And I think that's a big part of what they're doing here. I think they do this like absurdly long, whatever the fuck you want to call it, twittlonger against trans people, just to make it like, too big so that no matter what you do, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, but did you read this part? Oh yeah, but what about this part? You know what I mean? It's like, there's too much to grasp. So some people have done the work for us. Some people out there have put together kind of a TLDR of what the TERF manifesto is talking about, right? And it's not great. Once again, it's definitely not great. Like, I mean, we're talking about like devil summoner, not great, right? It's not Shin Megami Tensei's best work, let's just say. Anyway, let's get into this. This is Richard Dawkins' thread, and oh my god, it's still popping off. PZ Myers just commented. PZ Myers, famous atheist, not as much of a shitlord as Richard Dawkins, it turns out. So, yay for that. I don't really remember much about PZ Myers. Anybody know PZ Myers? I remember he was an atheist. This is like all I remember. I thought he was like right-wing or something, right? So, I mean, yeah, apparently Dawkins is too yikes for a lot of people these days. And that's probably a good thing. But yeah, let's see. First of all, I wanted to go through, okay, so let me show you what we got here. What do we have here on Twitter? Hi everyone, it's Blue Hair Irene. Do you remember me? Oh my god, I'm back from the fucking mermaid purgatory. Yeah, just to cover this fucking dumpster fire of a TERF manifesto. Yeah, it's called Women's Declaration of Sex-Based Rights, okay? And here's some like, okay, let's start off with this, okay? Motherhood is an exclusively female status. Maternal rights and services are based on women's unique sex-based capacity to gestate and give birth to children. These right, okay, so we're axolotl tanks. That's great. That's great. We're, childbirthing machines. Okay, and the word mother itself should stay reserved for persons of the female sex. What the fuck? They're policing language. These free speech advocates, they're policing language, I guess. Political participation. There are opportunities and protections that were specifically created to help women achieve equal status with men, such as participation quotas. These opportunities and protections should apply to persons of female sex and shall not include quote unquote, oh my god, this is terrible, chat, men who claim to have female gender. Oh my god, chat, oh my god, okay, no, okay, so this is just, these are some little snippets. This supposedly is the TLDR. Although it says part 1, so I don't know how TLDR they made it, right? We'll see. We'll take a look. Oh no, there's a much more rigorous and scholarly analysis. I recommend going straight to that. Instead, I'm only an activist. I'm only an activist. I don't know, chat. Should we read the activist thing or should we read the authoritative document? Rigorous and scholarly. That sounds like kind of like that could be a hot cake. Rigorous and scholarly. Okay. Okay, what is okay. Oh, okay, wait. So was that Mallory was the other person? Yes, that's Mallory. Okay, so they're both being really sweet to each other in the beginning. That Mallory's saying, "Hey, Sandra Duffy, she's the really, she's the scholarly one, go read her." And then Sandra is like, "Hey, I couldn't have done it without you, Mallory." So there's like a little high five here. It's kind of wholesome. It's kind of wholesome. We're getting wholesome already. Who knew on a stream about Richard Dawkins, where I'm a VTuber, that we would be getting wholesome, right? That's a little bit surprising. Okay, so let's take a look at this right here. And then afterwards, I want to take a look at Richard Dawkins' track record on trans rights. And once again, it's not great. It's not great. Okay. The post concerns the Declaration of Women's Sex-Based Rights produced by a group called Women's Human Rights Campaign. This declaration self-describes as being on the reaffirmation of women's sex-based rights, including women's rights to physical and reproductive integrity, and the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and girls that result from the replacement of the category of sex with that of gender identity. And from surrogate motherhood, what? Wait, what? Surrogate motherhood? They're calling out surrogate motherhood? Is that real? Wait, why? That seems like they're getting sidetracked. Wait, I thought you were just gonna hate on trans women here or something. Wait, what's your deal? Okay. Let's see what this is about. So, no surrogate motherhood, I guess. I don't know. The surrogate, quote unquote surrogate. I don't understand. Are there anti-surrogate mother people? I've never heard of this. Okay. The post owes a lot to Mallory Moore's excellent explainer. Yes, Mallory. Of the introduction of the Declaration, and is intended to complement Mallory's piece by arguing from, oh my god, wait, do we have to read both? I don't know. Arguing from IHRL that the Declaration is founded on false premises. The writer of this post is an academic lawyer working in the field of international human rights, with a specialization in gender and sexuality. I have written and taught on CEDAW. Wait, that is... Oh my god, wait. The other thing said what that was. What was it? What was the CEDW? That's not this, is it? CEDW. What is that? I saw this earlier. They always forget about trans men. Yeah, they're not well, I don't know. They have been kind of dicks to trans men lately too. So who knows? Who knows? Trans men might get ever since that book, is it Permanent Damage? Is that, oh my god, I can't remember the name of the book. But yeah, they've been harping on trans guys too. The writer of this post is an academic lawyer working in the field of international human rights with a specialty. Okay, the Yogyakarta Principle and Gender Diversity in IHRL. I'm writing this post in my personal capacity, and it does not reflect my views, the views of my employer, past or present, or any individual apart from myself. in writing this post, I am hoping, okay, wow, there's a lot of introduction here going on. It is important to note from the outset that sex-based rights are a fiction with a pretense of legality, and do not, in fact, exist in the manner that the term is used. What is being claimed here is that gender does not exist, and that sex, once assigned, is immutable. This analysis rejects this formulation. This analysis also rejects the Declaration's attempt to argue from international human rights law sources, which are misguided, ill-applied, and that must be the CEDW is one of those sources, I guess, in many places outsourced. The Declaration attempts to argue from international human rights law that there are law-based women's rights, which are okay, that's a typo. In here, in people, inherent, which are inherent in people, based on certain sets of physical characteristic correlating to an assignation. I have never pronounced that word before. Assignation of sex, which is then / has always been immutable. However, there's no basis for this assertion in the IHRL. In fact, as far back as 2009, the Community on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, in General Comment number 20, noted that since the adoption of the Covenant, the notion of prohibited ground sex has evolved considerably to cover not only physiological characteristics, but also social construction of gender stereotypes, prejudices, and expected roles. Sex in the IHRL includes the social construct of gender. Sex as a prohibited ground of discrimination does not merely refer to biological characteristics. This is established jurisprudence. It is notable that CESC, I don't know what this one is, CESCR, in observation, acknowledges that the evolution of the terminology in the IHRL, something which the WHRC, okay, that is the TERF Manifesto, WHRC, right? Declaration resoundingly fails to do. The central documents cited in the Declaration are the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Okay, that's the CEDAW. CEDAW General Comment number 35 and UN Declaration on Violence Against Women. The general comment in this document, written by a treaty body, that's not a person, a treaty body to explain, expand on, or interpret a certain convention, article, or thematic issue. A UN convention is a document binding on state parties who are signatories. States must implement the provisions of the convention in their law and policy. They are reviewed by the committee on the success of implementation. The declaration is non-binding document. The first and most important thing to note is the CEDAW Convention does not in any way provide sex-based rights, quote unquote, to women or is asserted in the Declaration introduction to lesbians. This claim is untrue for a number of reasons. Firstly, there's no such thing in IHRL as sex-based rights. As explained repeatedly in this post, there's no right which inhere in a person based on their physical characteristics. There is such a thing as protection from discrimination based on sex, wherein sex is one of the number of protected characteristics. For example, okay, however, sex is broadly understood as to refer to the social aspect of gender. Secondly, and rather obviously, lesbians are not a sex class and therefore could not have sex-based rights, even if such a thing were possible. Thirdly, so in other words, what we're saying is that this manifesto doesn't fucking make sense. It's a document. It's there. You can post a link to it. You can show it to people. They can scroll through it and be like, damn, that's a lot of document. But it's a bad document. It's a wrong document. It's an inaccurate document, right? And misrepresenting IHRL, like law, right, is, and I mean, we call this law, like with the, tongue-in-cheek in certain, not tongue-in-cheek, but like, it's law in the sense that it's international law, like, right, it's non-binding, the signatories are supposed to respect it, but maybe they do, maybe they don't, you know what I mean, it's international law, right, so it's a little bit different, it's a little less, like, well enforced, I guess. But yeah, they're just, they're going off talking about this shit, and they're describing rights that don't exist in the IHRL as being like objective facts, right? And it's kind of like, if you don't know this shit, you might follow along with this. You might be like, yeah, this makes sense, right? Oh yeah, sex-based rights, gotta respect those. We can't lose our sex-based rights, right? And when you really think about what that means, right? Now they talk about protection from discrimination based on okay, where is that? Protection from discrimination does exist that's based on um gender, but that's a little different, right? That's not the same thing as a quote unquote sex-based right. One paragraph in the Declaration introduction posits that recent changes replacing references to categories of sex, which is biological, with the language of gender, which refers to stereotyped sex roles in United Nations documents, strategies, and action, has led to confusion which ultimately risks undermining the protection of women's human rights. This sentence needs to be broken down to have its nonsensical basis understood. Firstly, biological sex, following Judith Butler's work, can also be seen as a socially constructed phenomenon. It is not true to say that bodies have physical characteristics, but those physical characteristics are not immutable. Sex characteristics can be changed. Sex characteristics are also not dyadic. Sorry, I almost wanted to say didactic there. Dyadic. They do not split neatly into two boxes, but come in many different variations. The fact that we have named categories for the two major presentations of humans does not mean that those are either the only two options, or that there are eternal and fixed categories. People are assigned to sex category based on their usually observed physical characteristics at birth. Sex categories are human inventions. Therefore, to attempt to adhere immutable human rights in people based on their physical characteristics at birth is an absurd proposition. Secondly, gender does not refer to stereotyped sex roles anywhere in the IHRL, which is what has been claimed. The definition adopted by the United Nations, which comes from the Yogyakarta Principles 2007, a non-binding but highly influential international document. The YP states that gender identity is, quote-unquote, understood to refer to each person's deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender, which may or may not correspond with the sex assigned at birth, including the personal sense of body, which may involve, if freely chosen, modifications of bodily appearance or function by medical, surgical, or other means, and other expressions of gender, including dress, speech, and mannerisms. This is the definition accepted by many on the UN human rights bodies, in particular the Office of Independent Expert on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, which has repeatedly cited it. Nowhere does it refer to stereotyped sex roles, nor does the Declaration give any sense of what a sex role is, how one can be stereotyped, and how to use the term gender, how the use of the term gender could give rise to any such confusion. Lastly, and once again, there is no proof given of how any of this could undermine women's human rights, or indeed where these unspecific rights, which are being purportedly undermined, are located in law. There's a lot wrong with this paper, yeah. The next paragraph goes on to state, so the first paragraph, okay, great, goes on to state that the confusion between sex and gender has contributed to increasingly acceptability of the idea of innate gender identities and has led to the promotion of the right to the protection of such identities, ultimately leading to the erosion of the gains made by women over decades. Women's rights, which have been achieved on the basis of sex, are now being undermined by the incorporation into international documents of concepts such as gender identity and sexual orientation and gender identity. So geez, it is the most minor of points, but as we are discussing the law, let's be accurate. The acronym is SOGIESC. Stands for sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. Okay, the paragraph. So yeah, that's just another thing that they just kind of got wrong. It sounds like the paragraph is worrying for a number of reasons. From a social point of view, it attempts to delegitimize the concept of gender identity and turn it into a scare quote falsity. From a legal point of view, it seems to be making the argument that gender identity should not be protected, and indeed that it is a mistake to rank it as a protected characteristic or a denotation of legal status. It conflates the right to protection of gender identity. On one side, I disagree with the quasi-legal terminology here too. Gender identity can be, oh my god, it's dense chat. Gender identity can be a protected characteristic, or it can be recognized legal denotation, but there is no such thing as the right to protection of gender identity, which a backslide in women's rights, which is intellectually dishonest and profoundly false. If there has been an erosion of women's rights, it is because of the force of patriarchy and misogyny, which work to oppress all women, cis and trans. It is not to do with the availability of legal gender recognition, and I cannot imagine where it could be legitimately argued that in human rights law that legal gender recognition or the protection from discrimination based on gender identity has affected any gender right or protection offered to women. It becomes clear that what the Declaration is attempting to do is to put forward a case for the elimination of gender identity from human rights law. And, oh, yeah, so this is what Dawkins wants people to sign on to. This is what I'm talking about. This isn't just some turfy trash, right? This is this is a wholesale undermining of trans rights, right? Document would happily see all legal protections removed from trans people. This is particularly clear when, following the misapplication of the Yogi Karta principles definition, the Declaration states that, quote-unquote, the concept of gender identity has enabled men to claim a female, quote-unquote, gender identity from to assert in law, policies, and practice that they are members of the category women, which is the category based upon sex. Trans women are, of course, women, not men. However, the Declaration refuses to refer to them as such. So the whole language is turfy. They're not even trying to put this in a sort of diplomatic way. They're just straight up, calling denying that trans women are women. This analysis will try to limit its repetition of this transphobic rhetoric, but it is also noted how the Declaration refers to its targets. It is not subtle. Oh my god. Okay, so we're like let's check in, chat. Okay, we're halfway through with this document. Okay, this is a humdinger of a document. Be thankful, okay, that you are not having to parse the legalese in the actual TERF manifesto, because that shit is like I said, it is built to gatekeep you out of understanding what they're saying. It is built to make you think that whatever critique you might have of trans rights or whatever uncomfortability that is what the document's about. And so they're not just taking people who are horrible transphobes and dragging them along. They are putting this out there in a way that could get people who don't really believe in this kind of wholesale reversal of, even trans dignity, let alone trans rights, along with them for the ride. And I think that this dense language is put there with a purpose, and that is the purpose, to get more, cast a wider net, right? Because you can say, I got receipts, and then you can show receipts, and if your receipts are like just a fucking file cabinet, nobody's gonna read that. It's blue-haired Irene. That is true. That is true. Dawkins used to program the answering machines with the voice of his wife's ex-husbands to annoy. What? There's signs that he's a douchebag. For that have been going on for a while. Yeah, they always forgot about trans men. Well, we'll see. Okay, let's get back into this. Moving on to the next incoherently applied IHRL document, the declaration then attempts to utilize CEDAW General Comment number 35 on violence against women to prove a point. However, in a particularly egregious misstep, it attempts to do so by choosing a quote which, in its full form, contradicts the point it's trying to make. This is classic. This is classic. You'll see right-wingers do this with research, right? Where they'll cite some research, and, I mean, if you're not used to dealing with research, you might be like, oh shit, they got a study. What am I going to do? How am I going to combat that? I don't have a study, right? It's worth looking at the study, because half the time they don't even read the abstract. And even when they do, there's a lot more to the study than the abstract, and that's why you have to go in there and see, what kind of claims they're making and what kind of methodology they have to support that, right? The Declaration quotes General Recommendation number 28 on the core obligations of state parties under Article 2 of the Convention, as well as General Recommendation number 33 on women's access to justice, confirms that discrimination against women is inextricably linked to other factors that affect their lives. The committee's jurisprudence highlights that these may include being lesbians. However, the general comment itself continues being lesbians, bisexual, transgender, or intersex. Oh my god, that's deceptive. This is just outrageously, indefensibly, intellectually dishonest. Not only is the Declaration attempting to use a piece of CEDAW committee jurisprudence to further its own ends, it is blatantly mischaracterizing the nature of the discrimination acknowledged by the general comment, which include discrimination based on transgender identity, where is therefore acknowledged by the committee, it's acknowledged by the committee to be real, right? When setting out the definitions on violence against women, states that the concept of quote-unquote violence against women as defined in General Recommendation number 19 and other international instruments and documents has placed an emphasis on the fact that such violence is gender-based. Accordingly, in the present recommendation, the term gender-based violence against women is used as a more precise term that makes explicit the gendered causes and impacts of this violence. Violence against women is recognized as gender-based. Transgender women are recognized by the CEDAW committee as women who are affected by this violence, and indeed by the intersecting forms of discrimination that flow from this facet of their identity. This is counter to everything expressed by the committee to claim otherwise. Likewise, the attempt to use Article 4, 7, and 10 of the CEDAW by the Declaration to try to remove trans women from participation in gendered public quotas, political life, and sports also counter to the modern interpretation of the Convention. The next document in attempted use by the Declaration is the UN Declaration Against Elimination of Elimination of Violence Against Women. UNDEVAW. Yes, UNDEVAW is what we're talking about here, chat. The UNDEVAW VAW states that for the purpose of this declaration, the term violence against women means any act of gender-based violence that results in or likely result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women. The declaration, however, makes the unfounded claim, chat, I have like fish on the brain, I don't know, we should switch to the jellyfish view maybe, claim that the definition of violence against women in the UNDEVAW is based on sex and not on gender identity. This is clearly contradicting the wording of the UNDEVAW itself, which recognizes violence against women as quote-unquote gender-based. The declaration goes on to make more assertions regarding the CEDAW. General Comment 35, including that it requires the collection of sex disaggregated data, which is untrue. The reference made to data disaggregation in the General Committee is as follows. States should establish a system of regularly collecting analysis, publishing, a system to regularly collect, analyze, and publish statistical data on the number of complaints of all forms of gender-based violence against women. All data should be disaggregated by type of violence, relationship between the victim and survivor, and the perpetrator in relation to the intersecting form of discrimination against women, and other relevant socio-demographic characteristics, including the age of the victim/survivor. The attempted citation in the Declaration, which does not come from the output of the treaty bodies or the Convention, is from the UN Women Gender Equality Glossary, which is at best an advisory document and essentially auxiliary to any actual jurisprudence of the United Nations. The use of these points around violence against women is intended to make a case that allowed trans women to define as women in that allowed trans women to self-define as women will disturb both the ability of cis women to access quote-unquote single-sex spaces and the ability of states to record accurately the identities of perpetrators of violence. It is clear that the implication here is that trans women are likely to be violent against cis women. Again, something which has no cited basis as a claim. Two final remarks about the introduction of the Declaration. One is that its odd turn into a brief argument against surrogacy, which it seems to conflate with trans women wishing to be legally recognized legally as mothers, although it is very unclear at this point. While it is true that the CEDAW does affirm the social significance of maternity, there is no link whatsoever between recognition of the capacity to give birth and the need to protect reproductive capacity and the recognition of trans women as women and their rights to refer to themselves as mothers if they have children. This is purely semantic argument, which then veers into the outright bizarre stating the exploitation and commodification of the women's reproductive capacity also underpins the medical research which is aimed at enabling men to gestate and give birth to children. Again, there's no reference for this, which is likely because no possible reference exists for it. Oh my god, TERFs. Okay, it is certainly not a matter for international human rights law. It then, to be colloquial, says the quiet part out loud. The inclusion of men who claim a female quote-unquote gender identity within the legal category of women, of lesbians, and of mothers threatens to remove all meaning from these categories, as it consists of a denial of the biological realities which the status for being a woman, being a lesbian, being a mother are based. This is clearly a call for the denial of recognition of trans women based on spurious notions of biology and strange conflation of sex/gender, sexual orientation, and parenthood into apparently quote-unquote legally similar classes. Finally, for the introduction, the Declaration turns its attention to the matter of trans children. In 2013, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, in General Comment number 15, on the right of health stated that quote-unquote state parties have an obligation to ensure that children's health is not undermined as a result of discrimination, which is a significant factor in contributing to vulnerability. A number of grounds on which discrimination is prescribed are outlined in Article 2 of the Convention. These are including sexual orientation, gender identity, health status, for example, HIV status, and mental health. It is thereby understood that trans children should not be discriminated against in healthcare based on the basis of their gender identity. Nevertheless, this is exactly what the Declaration calls for, stating that, quote unquote, the concept of gender identity is increasingly used to gender, quote, there's more quote unquotes, to gender reassign the children who do not conform to sex stereotypes or who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria. The idea that children are being pressured or forced into transition, which is what is implied here, is also unstated, unproven, and not borne out by facts of increasingly long waiting times for healthcare for trans children in many jurisdictions, including the United Kingdom. Oh my god. There's like a preamble. And I kind of think, isn't there like a part 2? Yeah. The articles of the Declaration are also repetitive in many of the misuses of the IHRL, which have previously been discussed in this post and do not require further investigation. It would suffice to say that they are nakedly anti-transgender rights and anti-participation of trans persons, in particular trans women, in public life. This is kind of fucked. Hey, what's up? I can't pronounce your name. I think it's supposed to be Heitlier. Yeah, Heitlier. What's up, Heitlier? How are you doing? How are you doing, friend? There we go. Okay, so, I am not going to subject you to any more of that legalese. That was the explanation of at least, you know, the large points. Oh my god, the larger points of the entire thing, right? That was like kind of the explanation of that. So yeah, I mean, oh, are you one of the knights that say knee? I think that's what Heitlier was. Heitlier was one of the knights that say knee, the mythical knights of Oingo Boingo. I'm not sure if they say knee. They mostly just scat, but yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's watch some of Richard Dawkins' greatest hits. And by greatest hits, I mean Richard Dawkins being transphobic as fuck.
I look like one of two men today. And also, Richard Dawkins, the man who wrote The God Delusion, accredited biological evolutionist, if that's the word, I don't know. Someone I've
You could listen to me read anything, even hateful screeds. Oh my god, thank you.
always looked up to, someone I've actually met. Well, he's been stripped of his Humanist Award that he received in 1996 due to being
An arcane
transphobic on
character,
Twitter.
yes.
Is that really the
Also
case,
meow.
though? Hello to my guys, my gals, my non-binary pals, and the monarchs who sit in between. It is your boy Jay. I hope you're okay and that you're having a wonderful day slash week.
Well, I was okay until you aura'd me.
Today we're going to be talking about something which may not be
Chat, I didn't know I was going to get into a stand battle here. What the fuck?
very relevant to you, but feels very relevant to me because I grew up with Richard Dawkins actually being like a bit of an icon in my house. My parents
He was actually my dad. No, just kidding.
Parents are very into science. They have
Oh my
always
God.
been skeptics, and he was just always a hot topic in our house. So when I saw a headline in April that he'd been stripped of his award, I was actually quite curious, and despite the fact that I'm trying
What's up with the animation? I don't know. I just thought I would bring back blue hair because people miss blue hair, and being blue hair this way is a lot easier than, you know, the other way, right? So, yeah, I just like thought that blue hair would be awesome for this gig, and yeah.
hands, I felt almost defensive because I was like, this man that I've always looked up to, how could he be transphobic?
I realized that there are some people that are not familiar with blue hair. Blue hair is another version of Irene. Me, yes, and I come in many forms, chat. It's like a persona or something, I guess.
So I decided to do a bit of digging, and I thought that I would do a bit of a video on this today so that you can learn more about him
Thank you.
as a person and what he's done and the consequences of those actions, because, you know, straight cis white men need to be taught sometimes. So Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist. He is a credited author, and he kind of rewrote the way that we look at atheism. He also coined the word meme in one of his books, which is quite funny to realize. He's no stranger to controversy, and he is kind of a public figure and a face to the new atheist movement. And he released this tweet on social media, which I will now put here, as quoted in...
That is actually kind of weird. Like, I mean, I know what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, wait, is it in the guilty gene? Yeah, because he theorizes that a meme is like a gene for what, like the noosphere? Does he talk about the noosphere? I don't know. I feel like whenever I say noosphere, I feel like I'm talking some like pseudoscience. I don't even know. Is there really a noosphere? Can we measure the noosphere? Does it have a Schumann frequency to it? I don't know, chat. I need to measure the Schumann frequency.
In 2015, Rachel Dolezal, a white chapter president...
Oh my god, are we talking about Rachel Dolezal? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. That's right, we're back to this again. Yeah, no, definitely. Richard Dawkins coined the word meme. I thought it was Doctor Who? Wait. Did Richard Dawkins steal that from Doctor Who? Dawkins invented memes, kinda. I don't think he understood what they would become. He's not exactly a meme magician. You know, he's not one of those rare Pepes, so to speak, chat. But he is, I guess, the granddaddy of memology. I don't know, chat. I don't know.
Of NAACP was vilified for identifying as black. Some men choose to identify as women, and some women choose to identify as men. You'll be vilified if you deny that they are literally what they identify as. Discuss. Oh, Richard, you're such an educated man. Why did you do this to yourself? For a bit of context, Rachel Dolezal was forced to resign from her position in the... I'm going to have to hold this up so I don't get it wrong. From the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, in 2015 after being exposed as a white woman posing as an African American woman. I'm going to slip in a quick clip here so you can kind of get a bit of context.
I did feel that at some point I would need to...
Yeah, and that's not the first time we've dealt with that comparison, right? This is famously something that I had to deal with in my debate with Irrelevant, right? Where I was basically accused of being Rachel Dolezal for believing in gender self-ID. So it was like, well, if you got gender self-ID, then why not race self-ID, right? It was Irrelevant's question, and the answer is, yeah, this is going to be really complicated. Okay, but let me see if I can put this in words. Okay, the answer is because sexual, gender identity and race are two different social constructs, right? That's why. It's really complicated. That even though you can draw parallels between aspects of your identities, you can't attribute, I don't know, some kind of uniformity, right? That's messed up. That's not clear thinking, right? That's not clear thinking on a relevance part. And I had to put up with that. So
Address the complexity of my identity.
Let me just say, we can't talk about the big picture that you have created.
well, he was basically saying, if gender self-ID, then why not blackface? But yeah, and then, you think that, like, with Debate Bros, you're like, okay, well, this is this thought experiment you're running. But then before you know it, they're like, but wait, do you approve of blackface? No comment check? Like, right? You're getting that question. You're legitimately getting that question. And it's like, it surprised me. I was like, wait, what? Are you actually asking me this? Did you just ask me if I'm Justin Trudeau's BFF? Did you actually just ask me if I am Rachel Dolezal's homie? Is that what you just asked me, irrelevant? Is that what you just asked? I couldn't believe it, right?
Without talking about the small picture first.
Right.
Let me just ask you the question in simple terms again, because you've sent mixed signals over the years. Are you an African-American woman?
F Debate Bros,
Identify as
exactly.
black.
Now, obviously, this is absolutely ridiculous. You can't identify as another race. You are what you're born as, which he was trying to use as an example for people who identify as the opposite gender. However, we all know that this isn't the case. You can't just choose to identify.
There's a Doctor Who wait, don't tell me that Dawkins is a Time Lord. Please don't tell me. Please don't tell me that Dr. Dawkins, Doctor Who, is this a thing?
Identifies the other gender, because I swear to God, the amount of trans people, myself included, who would just go along with their assigned gender at birth because it's a lot easier in the long run. Yeah, you don't choose this life. And the main issue with this is that he is comparing this to a woman who has made a choice to lie about her racial identity. And it's just bullshit. Now, I don't think that he was meaning to say it like this, because he actually did follow up the tweet with saying, I do not intend to disparage trans people. I see that my academic discuss question has been misconstrued as such, and I deplore this.
Academic discuss question? Oh my god.
It was also not my intent to ally in any way with Republican.
That's probably a real thing. I'm making fun of something that's a real thing, and I'm showing how it a fucking not intellectual person, what is it called? Oh yes, a pseudo intellectual manic pixie dream girl. Yep.
Bigots in the US now exploiting this issue. I have no doubts that Richard Dawkins is actually an ally of the trans community. I just think for an educated man.
Well, I mean, if you did have a few doubts about Richard Dawkins' allyship, let's just say that I wouldn't hold it against you.
And he really worded this in the wrong way, especially for the fact that this is a topic.
Yeah, the Lord. Oh wait, so there's like 4 horsemen, right? That was the structure, or at least that was the lore of the atheist movement, that there was 4 horsemen. Let me see if I can get them right. Okay, we got Dawkins, we got Hitchens, we've got Thunderfoot. Is Thunderfoot one? Sam Harris. Is that the 4 horsemen? Did I get them? Probably not. I'm not a very good atheist, chat. I'm kind of a lapsed atheist, if truth be told. I don't really... I'm a bit heretical in my atheism. I don't know.
Which kind of has nothing to do with him. He has the privilege of being a cis white male, and he has a large platform in which he can choose to educate.
Yeah, is Harris one, I think, right?
Educate people on topics such like this.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know the fucking 4 horsemen all. I just knew that there's 4 big ones.
With marginalized groups and minorities. Yet, he is no stranger to controversy and continually brings up topics which get a lot of backlash. So it's kind of no surprise that it's gotten to the point where his Humanist Award has been taken away from him.
Okay, this is Editing Joe speaking. After watching over this video and looking at some of the tweets that he has released, I just overall, to conclude, do not think that he is an amazing person. I think he has way too much privilege, and I don't think he understands how much privilege he has. I think, in essence, for this video specifically, I don't know if he's transphobic, so we're going to stay on topic with there. But overall, nah, sus.
I think the main thing to realise in this is that, again, I don't know if he's transphobic. I'd like to think that he isn't, but I feel like he's trying to talk about a topic which he is just not fully educated in.
Sus.
And yes, he is an educated man. He is a scientist.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
But at the same time, he's trying to talk about topics.
Oh, Sargon? For real? Sargon was one? Thunderfoot is only a YouTube gamer gator. He used to talk about Dawkins and Harris a lot before he moved over to harassing women in POC.
Which just don't involve him, and he's presenting them in a way that uneducated people are being able to chime in with an opinion. If you're wanting to talk about things like this, they should come from a non-emotional place, a non-biased place, and it should be driven by data and statistics. Now, when you talk to marginalized groups, for example, the trans community, we tend to actually talk about these things from a non-emotional place, but driven by statistics. Whereas when you present this topic upon people where it literally has nothing to do with them, and the point of discussion is to just bring down trans people, they will use examples as, I just believe that it should be this way. This is the main problem. He did it on Twitter, where it's like the worst platform to try and talk about anything educated due to the amount of trolls which
do not discourse on Twitter,
think that their opinion matters. However, I do really believe that we should be able to talk about this with people who aren't trans. I feel like we should be able to talk about sensitive...
Wasn't Sargon cancelled by like a kipper? Didn't he get kippered?
...topics.
Was it a kipper?
But at the same time, we shouldn't really try and talk over people that are experiencing it. And using the term choose to identify, a man choosing to identify as a woman, is really not the case. Like, when you look at the amount of trans women, like the murder rate for trans women, the assault rate, like, shit, man, like, I'm in the trans community, but once again, I would never talk over a trans woman's experience because I've never lived it. That's nothing to do with me. All I can do is listen and educate, you know? But yeah, he shouldn't be provoking topics such as these to his audience because he is a cis white male. And he knows that he's gonna get backlash for that, and you can't just expect to follow this up with an apology and that be okay. Like, I really don't believe in cancel culture at all. Like, I think it's kind of childish, but at the same time, you can't keep provoking people and then every time just follow it up with, oh no, but I didn't mean it that way. Well, if you didn't mean it that way, then you should initially structure that sentence in a way where it won't be misinterpreted. You are a smart man, dude. Like, come on. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether he should have been stripped of this award.
He definitely should have been stripped of
that
award.
But at the same time, I think it should discourage behaviour such as this because it has been shown over the years. He has a habit to provoke marginalised groups with scientific discourse about A, B and C. And as quoted in a statement from the AHA, said that Mr. Dawkins had, over the past several years, accumulated a history of making statements that use the guise of scientific discourse to demean marginalised groups, an approach anti-ethical to humanist values. This kind of statement, from what they're saying about him, just reminds me of, I think it's like, is it Ben Shapiro? Like, I don't know his name. But when it's like the facts not feelings things. Yeah, you can't just use...
That's what I call him. Facts not feelings man.
...science to talk over minority groups. Like, that doesn't... that shouldn't... What? The AHA also added, his latest statement implies that the identities of transgender individuals are fraudulent, while also simultaneously attacking black identity as one that can be assumed when convenient. Again, this is something that I don't feel like I have the right to talk about, but you should never... Come on, dude. Like, have you seen what happens to black people and people of colour? Like, you need to be smarter, and not like science smart, you need street smart. I don't want to delve into it because I am not a person of colour and I just don't think that's kind of my right. But you know, if you want to comment down below why you think this is fucking bullshit, then please do so. I think the main conclusion to this video is that he is just fucking stupid for a smart man. I think it was stupid of him to think that he could launch a discussion like this online and not expect a backlash from this, especially when you're talking about topics which you know are sensitive and you have worded the statement in a way which you just know will cause offense. Like, you literally said, men pretend to be women, women pretend to be men, discuss. Come on, dude. I think it is a shame to see someone so educated making stupid decisions, but I also hope that him being stripped of his award has actually made him think about the things he puts online and maybe even changes the way that he thinks. But knowing the majority of people who get told off about stuff like this, he'll probably be sat at home thinking, well, this is fucking bullshit, I did nothing wrong. Because, you know, nobody can take responsibility for their actions these days. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider giving me a like.
Meow, yeah, this is, here, I'll put the, I'll put the, channel in chat. If you want to go follow, J Page, I'm gonna follow. Pyong. And pyong.
Here for trans people. Don't. Hey there, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well.
Okay, so if you're in my Twitch audience, you might have seen this already, but we're gonna watch it again for YouTube.
Today we're going to be talking about something a little less fun because I want to talk to you about PragerU, and specifically how PragerU helps to plant the seeds of a narrative that eventually leads to anti-transgender views and hatred, even in folks who start off wanting to be affirming to transgender people. So yeah, we're talking about a lot today, which is why I brew myself some nice comfort tea, because it's gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a thing today. So yeah, it's that.
I kind of like stuff that debunks bullshit rhetoric. I really, you know, like this or Indiana Studios, you know, things that kind of break down the way that narrative and rhetoric can be used and misused.
Part of every YouTuber's career where they must make a video about PragerU. It's honestly part of that Faustian bargain we all make to sell our souls to the YouTube algorithm gods. It's right there between giving up your firstborn child after you hit 100k subscribers and the fact that you must inevitably become a makeup tutorial channel just before you fade off into obscurity. Anyways, my silly jokes aside, PragerU, for those of you who don't know, is a YouTube channel created by Dennis Praeger, a well-established rich conservative writer and talk show host. While Praeger University is not an accredited university, again, it's just a YouTube channel and a non-profit, apparently. It tries to frame each one of its well-produced short videos as study courses, lending itself an air of legitimacy and academic rigor.
Michelangelo
Also giving people who consume that content a feeling of accomplishment. That's something that somebody like Ben Shapiro does really well, is because he talks the way that most people think a smart person would talk, but maybe, you know, without actually getting into any concepts that are that deep, right? He gives the people the feeling that they've really accomplished something by listening to his talk, and therefore, since he makes them feel smart, they come back.
carved his David out of a rock. The Los Angeles County Museum of Art just offers us a rock. A rock. All 340 tons of it. That's how far standards have fallen.
PragerU's videos are basically meant to be easily shared and digestible bite-sized versions of rhetoric to disseminate or establish a conservative narrative quickly and comprehensively to anyone who watches them. Hell, you may have even seen their videos pop up as ads here on YouTube. They're that short. Unfortunately, more often than not, most of PragerU's videos are filled with misleading or factually incorrect content, filled with right-wing talking points that ultimately reinforce a thought rather than actually proving one. But what makes these videos work so well and why they're so easily spread is again, that air of legitimacy that they invoke, this air of professionalism, that they seem to be coming from a place of knowledge and awareness about this.
Yeah, they're packaged like knowledge. They're packaged like, reliable information. They're packaged in a way that speaks, the branding says trustworthy, even though everything about PragerU is the opposite. Is the opposite of trustworthy.
Situation. The people they put in front of the camera seem to be people who know what they're talking about. Experts, professors, politicians, things like that. Thought leaders, as you would say. But all mostly right-wing talking heads. They're also selective about which pieces of information they choose to share and in what context they
The left made Ben Shapiro famous.
Share that information in. Now, I share all of that sort of brief history of PragerU, not to discuss PragerU as a whole and how it tactfully uses misinformation and selective facts. Because if you want some great information about that, the YouTuber Sean has covered this in detail already, and I'll link their video below, or up here, I believe. No, the reason that I shared all that today is because I want to talk to you about a specific PragerU video, How Girls Become Boys, a video which currently sits at over 1 million views at the time of this recording. And I want to talk about this video specifically because I think it's a perfect example of how PragerU's stylistic weaponized disinformation and selective facts is positioned specifically against the transgender community, and is used in such a way to build upon pre-existing emotional biases and assumptions of the people that watch the video, the people that would just go to click on that video if they're searching on YouTube, and then direct these people down a darker path towards anti-transgender views. And the reason that I want to do this is because, as I joked about earlier, there are a ton of videos here on YouTube just made to debunking specific PragerU videos. And they're often done by leftist creators looking to quickly knock down conservative talking points, which PragerU videos are typically filled with. I mean, a few other YouTubers like the amazing Jammy Dodger have already done work breaking down the specific video that I'm going to be talking about today. And don't get me wrong, I find these videos to be incredibly cathartic and informative. But these videos by leftist creators are often made with the intention of validating the views of the creator's audience who already tend to agree with the person doing the debunking, with the YouTuber that they come to watch regularly. The people who watch those videos mostly already agree and come in with the assumption that PragerU is bad. The issue, though, is that most people who watch PragerU don't come in with the assumption that PragerU is bad. In fact, most of them have little to no opinion on PragerU at all. Most of them probably have never even heard of it when they click on the video. And even more so, most people who watch PragerU's videos on trans people typically don't come into the video hating trans people. That's kind of the point of PragerU's videos.
Welcome, Grey Knight.
The reason PragerU works is specifically because it frames itself as unbiased opinions for those looking for answers to honest questions that people who don't know much information on a subject, specifically in this case the trans community, may have. And it preys upon that honest curiosity to spread conservative talking points. PragerU often doesn't frame itself in its
The left needs to learn to ignore some people, like Ben Shapiro, but they don't, and I'm convinced that they never will.
Own videos as a right-wing organization, but as just an informational video just tending to give someone the facts about a situation. And this is something the wonderful YouTuber Mia Mulder talks about in this video over here, if you want to know more about that trend in general. I hope it's over here. It might be here. It's one of those two. I always forget. I should probably check.
Oh yeah, I'm standing in front of my Ginky Dama here. I have to prepare all the energy for the battle, right? We gotta I don't know.
That before I do a video, but it's one of those. The video will be up there and it's down below. But
got a persona battle coming up.
The dynamic that PragerU is trying to prey upon is it's trying to come
with
across
with one of the characters from one of the other SMT series.
A person just saying, hey,
should be
do
fun.
you have a question about trans people? That's totally normal. That's totally an honest conversation to have, and here's the truth. But what their truth is very stilted towards leaving people who are just asking honest and understandable questions about trans people feeling that they understand and still care about trans people at the end of the video. But instead, because they've watched the PragerU video, have had the seeds of a narrative that will be picked up down the line to lead to more overt—
I said it in Japanese.
Transphobic messaging, basically priming them for more overt transphobic ideas down the line. And it's that exact pathway that PragerU leads even trans-affirming people down that I want to talk about today. You see, most people who click on a PragerU video typically don't come into a video titled How Girls—
Wait, I could be mispronouncing that. Oh my god.
Boys hating transgender people or wishing transgender people harm. They just honestly wish to know—
Oh yes, Ginky Dama, yes.
Answer to that question. Why are there seemingly so many girls who are coming out as transgender today? PragerU's video doesn't overtly come across as transphobic or intentionally trying to attack or harm trans people. Because I think if that were the case, I believe most people would bounce off of it. Because I honestly, truly believe that most people don't wish harm towards trans people. They just wish to understand the situation, but don't know much about what it means to be
I have gotten called a fake weeb before, and I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I'll let that person win that argument. So person, you win that argument. You're more of a weeaboo than I am. Congratulations.
trans. So, as we dive into talking about PragerU's video, while I am going to be debunking the specific facts that it presents, I more want you to pay attention to how this line of reasoning and specific information leads
I guess I haven't watched enough of the fan-based Dragon Ball Z stuff.
someone who watches the video down a certain path with specific information and misinformation, as well as what the video leaves out, all while working to come across as compassionate towards transgender people. All done in order to convince folks that these views are actually caring and actually kind towards trans people, instead of the harmful views that they actually
I will concede that Shapiro is funny when he reads rap lyrics. I mean, I think I would be funny in the same way, because it's like there's just certain people that are hard to associate with, like, rap culture. Ben Shapiro's one of them, and I'm probably one of them too. It's one of those things, right?
are, all in order to sow the seeds of transphobic agendas.
It's just that that wet ass P word make the pullout game weak.
down
Oh
the
no,
line.
chat.
So you can see why I needed the T. Not testosterone. I don't like testosterone. Some other people do. I don't. But tea. Like regular tea. I like tea. Tea is good. Anyways, on with the video. But before we get to the meat of this video, let's talk about something a little bit more positive. This video's sponsor, Skillshare.
Oh my god, it's Skillshare. That is not paying me yet. Skillshare, if you wanna get this on my video, call me. Yeah, that's just what you need is Skillshare commercials.
Now, I've already done a whole video on that book, which will be linked up here, and also the wonderful YouTuber Cass Eris has a great series breaking it down chapter by chapter that I'll link below. But moving on, let's get into the actual video.
Oh my god, I've seen some Cass Eris. I have never seen that one.
If you know any middle or high school girls today, or if you are one yourself, it would not
Abigail Schreier. Wait, is she a TERF?
be surprising if you know someone who identifies as transgender. The latest statistics indicate that 2% of American high school students now identify as transgender, and the overwhelming majority of them are teenage girls. Between 2016 and 2017 alone, the number of females seeking gender surgery in America quadrupled.
The video actually starts off with some good information. That 2% number of high schooler students identifying as transgender is accurate, at least according to a 2017 study by the CDC. So, good job, PragerU!
If she's on PragerU, I'm gonna go with yes on the TERF.
You did have
Question.
some good information in there. However, the video then goes further to claim that most of the people coming out as transgender were teenage girls. Yet, this information is not at all supported by that CDC study that they're citing. In fact, the study actually groups students in 3 different ways. First, as cisgender, i.e. not identifying as transgender boys. Second, cisgender girls. And third, transgender people as a group, regardless if they were girls, boys, or non-binary. And this is mostly because the way the questions in the study were framed made its answers by trans students unclear on what gender they were actually talking about. If they were talking about their gender that they were assigned at birth.
I mean, the best thing to mock Ben Shapiro for is his fiction. That shit is golden. Like, that is... I don't know how it didn't end up on certain New Zealand related websites, let's just say.
Or the gender that they identified after they came out as trans. Now, that's honestly a mistake by the study, and the study actually admits to it within its own pages. So the claim that PragerU is making here isn't really backed up by the actual facts of the study. Yet, that's not really the point that PragerU is getting at. The larger point they're trying to drive at is not the amount of transgender people that there are, but that more girls, quote unquote, or what we would call assigned female at birth folks, people who are born seen as girls and could stay that way or not, more of those girls are coming out as transgender than there used to be, and they're coming out more often. That's the piece of information that PragerU is trying
Because they don't go after conservatives,
to
yeah.
focus on, even though that isn't actually backed up by the facts. And we'll be coming back to that in just a second, so we'll move on for now, but just keep that in your mind, that the whole framing of this...
No, I mean, I think the real thing is that the people just don't know about Ben Shapiro's fiction. Like, he's not known for his fiction. And I feel like if you buy his fiction, you're a hardcore fan, and you're gonna look the other way when the cringe comes. Maybe you'll just put down the book and it'll just stay on your bookshelf.
This video is around the supposed...
Oh, let's not talk about that.
and emphasis
A
on the
horrible
supposed
website of which we shall not speak.
recent trend of increasing number of high school girls specifically coming out as transgender.
But if you graduated
Okay, well, we'll cover it on another stream.
high school over a decade ago, it was unlikely
Oh my
that you knew
God.
anyone.
Listen, that is a great way to get, like, rated. The only time I've ever gotten rated on YouTube has been mentioning... Oh, I didn't even mention the website, though. Oh my God.
Who was transgender because, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the condition underlying it afflicted roughly 1 in 10,000 people, or 0.01% of the population.
I think people have done, like... Didn't Chapo do, like, a reading of Ben Shapiro's, like, novel?
Okay, so this next point that the video is making is very interesting. First off, notice who Abigail Schreier's talking to. She says if you graduated high school a decade ago, she's aware that she's talking to an older audience, probably of parents of transgender people, at the very least older people who aren't in touch with transgender kids today. She's very aware of the distance between the people that she's talking about, transgender students, and the people that she's talking to, people who are worried or concerned about transgender youth. And she's also at the same time drawing a line back to the past, saying, hey, you don't remember there being this many transgender students back when you...
I mean, honestly, that is a good topic. Oh my God, yeah. That is a really good topic for a stream.
were a kid, do you? She even supposedly backs this up with a statistic, citing that back then, over a decade ago, only 0.01% of people...
Because I'm good at dramatic readings. I don't know if you know this, chat, but I'm very good with dramatic readings. That's why I play JRPGs and visual novels and things like this on streams so that I can do all the voices for all the characters and they can live as complete individuals inside my head and completely clutter up my consciousness. That's not...
were transgender. And this creates a very stark contrast between the 2% figure that she cited a moment ago. But it's
sometimes it's hard to keep them straight.
Basing
oh my
itself
God, I
off
keep
of
on
the
digging my
emotional
hole
feeling
deeper.
that she knows her audience will have.
Irene.
However, the facts that she's citing do miss a few things. Firstly, that number of 0.01% comes from the DSM-4 and previous editions of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Back then, when the DSM-4 was published, those numbers were mainly based on studies of people who chose to report that they were transgender. That addition was made prior to the recent explosion in acceptance of transgender people. When these studies were first made, there were less people identified as transgender because they may not have even known what transgender was, or even knew it could possibly apply to them. And secondly, even if they did actually identify as trans, why would they tell someone in a world where being transgender was likely to get you beat up or, discriminated against? Further, even if we look at the DSM today, the DSM-5, it actually still has roughly the same number, but the criteria has changed. The numbers that the DSM today cites makes it very clear that it's not focusing on the transgender population
You found his book on Amazon.
as a whole, but on those who specifically have gender dysphoria, those who feel a mental distress at their gender. The DSM makes this distinction clear. There's those who suffer from gender dysphoria and those who are transgender people as a whole, those who identify as a gender other than the one they are at birth. And people can be trans for a...
Wait, why don't they make like a... Oh my God, they should make like a dating sim. Wait, okay, here's what I want. I want to play a dating sim where I get to date like conservative content creators or something. Come on, let's have a Lacey Green arc. Can we have a late... I'm so kidding. Oh my God, this is not funny, chat. This is not funny. I'm not really gonna have a Lacey Green arc, I promise.
Number of reasons, such as gender euphoria, a happiness at having your gender affirmed, or just feeling more comfortable in a different identity. So when the DSM cites that 0.01% number, it makes very clear that it's only talking about a specific part of the transgender community. And all this isn't even taking into account the issues with the DSM.
I want to play more dating sims, but I want to play ones that aren't actually dating sims. Like, that is my genre. Dating sims that aren't actually dating sims. That is my thing right there.
In general, when it comes to talking about trans issues. And you can find more about that in articles linked down below. In fact, the most accurate studies today, and even they aren't fully accurate, have found that about 1.4 million people identify as transgender in the United States today, which is about 0.8%. And even that number is still questionable. So there
The conservative YouTube version of Honey Pop.
are definitive issues with how this information of
I want like Doki Literature Club with like, I don't know,
0.01% of people simply
like Caitlin Bennett.
identifying as transgender is being presented with, and the
Oh no, I don't actually want, oh my god, chat, why did I say that? I'm gonna, okay, anyway, I just thought it would be funny if you paired me with Caitlin Bennett. I just thought, anyway, no.
PragerU video. But this
No, chat,
is
no.
purposeful on the part of PragerU. It's being put up there to make the implication, to make
Oh wait, do you know, oh my god, I better not say this. Oh my god, Irene, shut up. Irene, shut up.
that emotional appeal through stark contrast, as I said before. Oh, there are a ton of trans people today, but there were less so before. Don't you remember that when you were a kid? And that
Oh, she dated like Chris Reagan, and I mean, she was kind of a mixed bag to begin with, but a lot of people associate her relationship with Chris Reagan with her sort of like flipping her script from being like a sex educator to being kind of a weird like red-pilled quote-unquote centrist, right? So like the Lacey Green arc would be if you date a conservative guy, or if you're like, you know, I don't know. It's cringe. It's cringe. That's the point. The point is it's cringe.
that begs the question of why? Why are there so many more transgender people today? That's the question that the
Ben Shapiro, Lauren Southern, Steven Crowder.
video is asking its audience to begin to think about.
0.01% of the
Maybe like Alex Jones's Monica, right?
population.
Like the whole time you're all like dating like Ben Shapiro, or you're dating like Lauren Southern, or, you know, right? Or Ariella Scarcella, and then, but Alex Jones like makes you like pick him instead.
Almost none of
Oh my
these
god,
cases
and you get stuck with Alex Jones and like the infinite, like, oh my god.
were teenage girls. In fact, before 2012, there was
I can just imagine like Alex Jones like gets you alone and like he's like, you know, we never have, I can't do his voice. I hope you'll forgive me. That is one voice that I don't think I could do. I think I would destroy my throat by even trying to do Alex Jones, so I won't. But I can just imagine, like, he'd be like, we never get any time to talk to each other. Finally we can talk to each other all we want. I don't know. I don't know. He would try to like talk to you about something that you obviously aren't into and just be like, no, but like the Dallas Cowboys though, seriously.
no scientific or
I
medical
really think they're going to win this year. They're looking strong.
literature discussing adolescent girls who wanted to transition to the opposite sex. That doesn't mean that we didn't know about
She made a Why I Took, yeah, that was the famous video. That was like the turning point. That was when Lacey Green got bit and turned into a zombie.
transgender individuals. Gender dysphoria, the severe discomfort in one's biological sex, has been studied for nearly 100 years. It almost always involved
We
boys
need to crowdfund this idea now.
who began feeling it between the ages of 2 and 4 and were strong and persistent in their assertions to everyone around them that they were really girls. When a phenomenon that affects one half of a population, boys, suddenly begins affecting the other half, girls, and when its age of
Okay, this is so messed up. I'm not even like paying attention because I'm more thinking about this cursed dating sim that we're gonna make as like some kind of a, I don't know, we'll like create like a GoFundMe or something to make this actually happen. But like this is really fucked up. She's like saying she's misgendering like trans guys and trans women. And then she's like saying that, like, but trans used to only happen to trans women, right? And now it happens. There's trans guys too. That's weird. That's weird. Something happened. What happened? It moved over. It changed. And what she doesn't realize is that trans guys have always existed. It's just that society doesn't always recognize them. And society is, to some degree, oblivious to their existence. But yeah, she thinks that trans guys came out of nowhere. That's how she's experiencing reality.
onset shifts from preschool to adolescence. Something
Wait, Lacey even tried to do a Rachel Dolezal? I didn't hear about this.
Significant is happening.
And here is where we see PragerU continue to beg this question by presenting more information.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is half of the time Lacey Green seems like somebody I could hang out with, and then the other half of the time she's being like a TERF apologist.
And as fact. Schreier states that back in those earlier studies, there were far less girls than men that identified as transgender. But notice the specific wording that she uses. Quote, there was no literature discussing...
So the way she'll say it is backwards. She's calling people, you know, trans people the wrong gender, right? She's calling them by their, like, birth sex, right? She's...
adolescent girls who wanted to transition to the opposite sex. And that wording...
Not Jessie, but, what's her name? Abigail?
That specific wording is true. There was no literature on girls transitioning to the, quote, opposite sex. But notice that she doesn't go into the reasons behind this, why there wasn't a ton of study on adolescent girls coming out as the opposite sex. She leaves the implication that it was because there were less girls coming out as the opposite sex. And then she shifts the conversation to be about boys. I mean, she even states, we knew about trans people, it was young boys, you see.
Wow.
Almost always. It was always just young boys that were coming out at that.
Like, it's bad enough to have, like, stereotypes, right? And that you're not conscious of. It's even worse than, like, you just act like those are real things, right? That you, even when you're, like, forced to reflect on it, you're like, nope, that's what it is. It's like, that's what trans people are. Trans people are trans women. And so the fact that there's trans men now, oh my God, what happened? Are the chemicals in the rainwater making the frogs gay? What's going on?
At that age. And less of the girls that she's talking about today. And this is a deliberate bait and switch, because let's talk about what Schreier's leaving out here. The fact that there was no literature discussing assigned female at birth kids identifying as transgender is because most research being done was specifically focusing on trans women.
Trans men were invented by George Soros circa 2008.
Those who were seen as boys at birth and transitioned to being seen as a woman. In fact, one of the only major research being done was by a man named Ray Blanchard, who only studied trans women.
Is it really Blanchard? Yeah, I guess that's the correct French way to pronounce it. Oh my God, I was calling Blanchard the whole time. It's like, Blanchard. Blanchard, why are you always trying to call me an AGP? Oh wait, no, I wouldn't be an AGP, would I be? Wait. Oh yeah, he doesn't really have a thing for bi people. Oh my God, I don't even want to think of what Ray Blanchard would call me, right? But just bad things in general. Either way. Either way that he labels you, it's...
women, and also framed trans women as being autogynephilic, another misinformed medical trope that I've spoken about in another video that I'll link down below. But the point that I really want you to focus on here is that the attention, as is most always often the case in many medical studies, focuses on those who were seen as men at birth over those who were...
Lacey's fans began calling her out for the red pill thing. She tried to claim she wasn't white because of her dad's religion, and everyone had to tell her that religion is not race.
Seen at women at birth, especially in kids. This happens quite often. For example, let's take a look at autism. For a long time, it was thought that boys were far more likely to present with autism than girls, like vastly more. In fact, this...
Only boys can be autistic. That's right. Us girls are never autistic. We're super empathetic and attentive to other people's emotional needs, and we pay attention to social cues, so we can't be autistic. What are you talking? It's not like we, like, learn to mask really good or something. It's not like we're forced to, like, you know, forced into these roles or anything like that. No, it's definitely that girls are just not autistic.
CDC approximated that 4 boys for every girl had autism.
Whoa.
Yet more recently, it's been found that both women and men manifest autism about at the same rate, and it manifests differently in men and women for a whole host of different reasons. Yet, at the time, most studies of autism focused on men, so the signs of autism and how it specifically presented in women were often overlooked and not understood.
It's like people not being in fear for their lives, for being themselves, somehow makes them appear more often in the wild.
Causing young women to miss being diagnosed at a young age.
Weird.
Of those diagnosed with autism at any point in their lives, 50% of boys were diagnosed before age 11, compared with only 20% of women. And this isn't even to mention that women are more likely to mask their symptoms of autism because they're taught to be more active socially than young boys are from a young age. So autistic girls are often better equipped to at least hide their autistic traits by actively learning social cues. And this happens all over medicine. Cis women and assigned female at birth folks are far less likely to be believed or diagnosed by a medical professional. And this continues with trans folks.
Regarding relative prevalence of specific identities, 2 main trends are described widely in the literature. First, transgender females, females assigned male at birth, are usually identified at higher rates than transgender males, males assigned female at birth. In some studies, the proportion of transgender women to men is as high as 2 to 1. However, these ratios should not be taken as a definitive indication of actual population sizes, given the limitations in methodology used to record them. Many studies survey subjects enrolled in plastic surgery,
Oh shit, chat.
endocrinology,
Chat,
or
how
primary care
are my frames?
clinics, and as such only reflect populations that are well integrated into existing healthcare systems and accessing care. Furthermore, some estimates derive from global data, and definitions of transgender and non-binary identities vary substantially across cultures.
So, the lack of research on trans men, or as Schreier puts it, this lack of research into young girls identifying as the opposite sex, doesn't just come from there being less girls that come out as transgender, but comes from a real bias in medicine. Yet Schreier is intentionally leaving that piece of information out, leaving this implication that, oh, we think more boys were coming out as transgender, but today there's more girls. Again, begging that question. And it's in this question that people are implicitly asking because of the information that she's presented or not presented that Schreier begins to place another theory.
In 2016, Brown University public health researcher Lisa Littman began studying the sudden spike in trans identification of teenage girls. She concluded that peer influence and social media influence had a lot to do with this trans teen phenomenon. After all, based on parent reports, none of these girls had exhibited
What's Up Women's Rights was a really good idea.
Symptoms of gender dysphoria at the age that it typically first presents, early childhood.
Instead of pointing out the lack of study on trans men or assigned female at birth folks that I talked about a second ago, Schreier instead points to a concept known as rapid onset gender dysphoria, which basically postulates that young girls specifically are suddenly, today, quickly identifying as transgender because they were seeing it on things like YouTube and Facebook and other social media places as being the cool thing to do, and just wanting to jump on the trend. And this was supposedly because, as Schreier points out, assigned female at birth folks were identifying as transgender at an older age rather than the 2 to 4 age range that we've seen in trans women, or as this video says, young boys. Again, this age differential may just come from a lack of understanding how being transgender is often understood in young girls, as I spoke about before, but again, Schreier ignores this, again postulating that it was RODG, rapid onset gender dysphoria. And RODG seems to have some scientific backing to it, as Schreier states. It comes from a study by a woman named Lisa Lightman. And if you look at Lisa Lightman's study, it may seem sciencey on the surface, and it seems to indicate that there are a large number of quote-unquote girls coming out as transgender without actually being trans. And the study seems to be legitimate. But it's actually really bad research if
oh
you
my
look
god,
into it.
I really
First
don't
off,
want this
Lightman's study was done
stream
not
to
on
like
children,
die here.
but on parents of transgender youth. And the study was generated by surveying parents on 3 different websites: Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals. Now, for those of you who don't know, all of those sites that I mentioned already had parents on it who were discussing their worry about the sudden onset of becoming transgender. The study was begging the question. It was already going after parents who already thought this way about their transgender kids. Basically, the study is like if you went to a science fiction convention and started asking folks there if they've ever seen Star Trek, and then saying that your results at that convention are indicative of everyone in the world. Of course, the results of that study are going to be skewed towards more people having seen Star Trek than are actually indicative in the real world. But in reality, the idea of assigned female at birth folks, AFAB
Are we
folks,
back? I'm sorry about the frames, chat. I don't know what's going on. My internet is sus lately. It's super sus. It's completely sus. And oh my god, I just broke my neck. Anyway, it's bad. Yeah. Oh no, it's going. Wouldn't be surprised if it was true that there are more trans women than trans men, but it might have something to do with how AMAB people are socialized. Yeah, it's just like, you know, there are assumptions made based on people's perceptions, and they don't even realize that, you know.
From now on, identifying as trans later in life more than assigned male at birth folks isn't actually new. First, as the DSM-5 points out,
chat, let me know if you're, I just want to make sure you're still able to like get, like, are you able to hear the video and stuff, even if it's like stuttering?
Occurs around puberty or much later in life. Some of these individuals report having had a desire to be of the other gender in childhood that was not expressed verbally to others. Others do not recall any signs of childhood gender dysphoria.
Same idea behind why autism is more often detected in socialization, plays a large role in how people respond to circumstances of their lives.
Parents
yeah, true.
often report surprise because they did not see signs of gender dysphoria during childhood.
First and foremost, regardless of your gender, parents often miss early signs of a kid being transgender. For me specifically, my mother didn't really see signs of me being trans until I was
the video, but is the audio okay?
in high school, because, you know,
really
I was good at hiding it.
That really
I had
sucks.
an incentive to hide it. But also, those seen as girls are less likely to be seen, believed, and or diagnosed in almost every case. So the seeming abruptness of girls assigned female
Lots of
birth,
starts
people
and stops on
identifying
the
as transgender
stream.
later in life is probably more a case
No,
of
I don't think it's the video. It's my fucking internet, because like internet is sus. Internet is sus, and I don't know why. I feel like, oh my god, I'm so pissed off, chat. I'm so pissed off. Right? This is a landlord thing. This is going to necessitate dealing with the like evilest force in the known universe, the force of landlord, that, especially boomer landlord, that doesn't understand what I do for a living or the necessities. Anyway, meow.
Parents just missing stuff. And by the way, numerous organizations have criticized Lightman's study, both in her methodology and in her findings. But of course, Schreier just skips over all of this information and instead just states that ROGD is a fact. It's something that's been proven by numerous studies instead of one single solitary study that has many questions about it. But again, this is intentional on Schreier's part because, as Giulia Serrano puts it,
while RODG is scientifically specious, the concept serves a very clear practical purpose. It provides reluctant parents with an excuse to disbelieve and disaffirm their child's gender identity under the presumption that it is merely a byproduct of ROGD. It also provides a rationale for restricting their child's interactions with transgender peers and access to trans-related information, as such things are the imagined cause of the condition.
And that's the important thing that I really want you to get across right here, because parents want their kids to be okay. They want to care about them. But there's also a lot of transphobia out there. Being seen as trans, just as being gay was and still is in many places, is considered to be a bad thing, instead of something that you can just be. And so, as a result, parents will look for any reason to not have their kids be one of those horrible trans people. I'm not saying these parents are bad people or hating trans people, but they do have an inherent transphobic bias. They may see transgenderism as something that's bad.
Oh my god, I hate that word.
That they don't want their
Oh my
kids to
god.
be. I'm not saying that most of these parents are being like, ugh, I hate.
Like, I hate that word because it makes it sound like you're equating, well, I mean, like, oh my god, like, I just don't want this word to continue. Like, I want people to think this is, like, not how you say it. Like, are you talking about trans rights? Are you talking about the phenomenon of being trans? Just, like, say that. Don't say transgenderism. It makes it sound like we're, like, trying to convert everybody.
Trans people, they're awful. I'm sure there are some overtly transphobic parents out there. I'm sure there are many, actually. But I feel that most people just have this internal relationship to transgender equals bad, even if they don't actually overtly state as such. In fact, the wonderful Abigail Thorne did a video on that dynamic down below. It's something similar we saw with gay people. It's like, I have no problem with gay people, I just don't want them near me. But even
oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Beyond that though, being trans today in today's society means facing a lot of transphobia, hatred, and bigotry, and a lot of internal struggles that you have to face as well. Being trans can also mean costly medical care and discussions with therapists. In the face of all of that, it's easier for parents to want to find a way to dismiss their kid being trans, because it will make both their lives easier, and more importantly, they think it'll make their kids' lives better. The study I spoke about earlier, the one that said that 2% of high school students
So people are just having success by watching, like, a minute or so behind.
Are trans, also pointed out that 27% of transgender students felt unsafe going to school, and 35% of them were bullied, and 35% of them also attempted suicide as a result. And so, being honest here, I don't blame parents for the feeling, not their actions, but I can't blame parents for the feeling of wanting to protect their kid from that, of wanting to protect their kid from all the stuff that comes with being transgender. And in many parents' minds, the easiest way to save them from that is to stop them from being trans, because they know that if their kid is trans, they can't protect them from that. It's too much. The world will come for them, and there's nothing that they as a parent can do to stop that. I mean, I remember when I came out as trans, which I did while I was in college, actually, even then, after I came out, my stepmother ended up crying. Not because she was upset I was trans, but as she told me that night, she cried because she knew that I was going to face bigotry. She knew I was going to face transphobia. And she hated
Chat, I'm like really
that I would have
hoping,
to endure.
cause like, okay, so the beginning of the stream did not have any problems at all. I'm hoping that the problems will clear up if I wait a little bit, but I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. Maybe they're, like, my roommates are doing something. I don't know. I don't know.
Or that. It's painful.
Rapid
for any
Onset Star
parent
Trek
to feel
fandom.
that. And that understandable feeling is what Schreier and PragerU is praying.
That's the problem, is it's like not in my room. It's like a
upon.
fucked up
And
situation.
ROGD allows for that. It allows parents to dismiss their transgender kids' thoughts and feelings, saying, oh, it's just a trend. But if their kid actually is transgender and they do dismiss it as ROGD, well, this can mean that they're forcing their kid to hide who they are. And it can lead to very, very real mental health issues for that kid and suicidal thoughts down the line. You're shoving your kid into the closet. To ignore who they are forces these kids to go down a darker path. But Schreier never talks about any of that. All she's doing is trying to give parents a way to dismiss their kid's transgender identity. That's all she cares about. She's not actually caring about the kids or actually talking about, what a kid might be going through. Instead, she's just trying to appeal to the emotional reaction that a parent is having. No, according to ROGD, it's just YouTubers and influencers that are causing their kids to transition. And that is something that Abigail Schreier leans directly into.
YouTube, Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok, and Instagram all host popular social media influencers, today's version of Hollywood stars, who insist that if you feel uncomfortable in your body, you're probably trans. Many promise that if you start a course of testosterone, all of your problems will go away. There's every reason to believe that these girls are experiencing real psychological pain. Rates of anxiety, depression, and instances of self-harm are all at record levels for this generation. A quick fix becomes very tempting. So it doesn't take much. A YouTube video, a friend's suggestion.
A quick fix. Oh, that's such bullshit. Oh my god. This is spoken in ignorance of trans people's experience. There is no quick fix. Like, transition is a long and difficult process, regardless of like what it entails. It's not something that is the path of least resistance, other than in that it is the path that is most true to the person experiencing the gender, right? But societally, logistically, socially, it is not the path of least resistance by far, and it is such an ignorant statement. It is such a it so betrays what a place of ignorance the speaker is coming from to say this.
To get a troubled girl to buy into the fantasy that gender transition is the answer.
You are an ism.
Unfortunately for these girls who do not have typical gender dysphoria, gender transition rarely offers relief.
So you can see up until now, this whole video
got
has
better?
been framed around trying to build an emotional appeal to parents
God,
and
it
people
keeps
that
on-
want to
it's
be
like
affirming to trans
cyclical.
kids, who want to protect trans kids. But then she's starting to
You're
take
watching
it
live
a little
and
bit
it's
further.
working. Oh, good.
She's starting to position it from, oh, let's care about your kids. Why is there this issue here? And begins to focus more on the why this is all happening. And she focuses more on people like me, your good old-fashioned YouTuber, that I'm trying to make your kids believe that they're trans. That
It's all Jesse Gender's fault. There it is, chat. There it is. We just like, that's right. We're okay, but it's all Jesse Gender's fault. I'm gonna blame the bigger influencer, chat. I'm just a small bean. It's not nocommentchick's fault, but it's definitely Jesse Gender. Oh my god, come on, Abigail.
we're incepting it into their heads.
Come on.
Trying to make it sound cool. Schreier even says in her book that YouTubers are, quote,
Chucking the DSM-5 aside, advising that even if you don't have traditional gender dysphoria, you might still have one of the other types.
and I mean, didn't I do this earlier in the video? Let's roll the clip of me saying that, Lucian. People can be trans for a number of reasons, such as gender
The beginning was fine. I know, right?
a happiness at having your gender affirmed, or just feeling more comfortable.
Yeah, in general, YouTube's working, better, but it's like I'm having real problems on Twitch, right?
a different identity. See? She's got me. Schreier's got me. I'm trying to make your kids think it's easier to become trans. But that's not actually true. First, as I said, the DSM-5 itself acknowledges this. Can we roll that clip, Lucian? The numbers that the DSM Today cites makes it very clear that it's not focusing on the transgender population as a whole, but on those who specifically have gender dysphoria. You see, most trans YouTubers, I won't speak for every single trans YouTuber out there, but most trans YouTubers and most people talking about trans issues are actually just following the research. Being trans simply means not identifying as the gender you were assigned at birth, and that doesn't require you to have dysphoria. And I talked about that in a video that I'll link down below or up above. But the important thing here is that Schreier is starting to point the finger at trans YouTubers, and by extension, any trans person or trans ally who espouses this same narrative. You see, the reason that Schreier is pointing the finger at trans YouTubers and social media stars is not because of us specifically, but because we often tend to be the most visual and vocal trans people out there. Trans people often don't get political platforms as often, or get to be seen on TV and represented on TV
That's right,
as much.
the quick dose.
No, trans YouTubers, which
The
is
quick dose of intramuscular testosterone.
also some of the most popular media by young trans kids, and kids in general, is often the place where people will be most exposed to trans people. And so she wants to try to frame us as liars, or as deceptive,
Ooh,
or
a suggestion.
as trying to harm their kids, even if we're just following the actual science that Schreier is intentionally leaving.
Oh, and hey, on Twitter, feel free to at me anytime with, like, you know, suggestions or ideas. Like, it's always good when people at me, and it's fun to interact with you on Twitter.
Out. Now, she's not saying that we're active villains, but she's also not saying that we're innocent bystanders either. But she's sowing the seeds for that more deceptive narrative.
And it's a catastrophic mistake for psychologists, educators, and the medical establishment to rush these teens towards a solution that will almost certainly harm rather than heal. Because here's what's not in dispute. Unnecessary medical gender transition causes irreversible damage, high risk of infertility, sexual dysfunction, and the creation of a permanent medical patient. Tragically, we've made it far too easy for kids to take this path, long before they're ready psychologically or emotionally to make such a life-altering decision. Testosterone is easily obtained by today's teens.
Easily.
In Oregon, a 15-year-old can walk into a gender clinic. Yes, there are now gender clinics all over the country, and walk out the same day with a prescription for testosterone without her parents' permission. 16-year-old girls have been able to undergo double mastectomies, the removal of both breasts, without even a therapist's note. Predictably, hasty gender transition, remember we're talking about teenagers here, is now leading to a lot of regret. New testimonials appear on YouTube almost every week from teens who acknowledge that they made a terrible mistake and warn others not to make the same one.
All of this part of the video is just fear-mongering by Abigail Schreier. She's using the idea of trans people who detransitioned as a weapon against trans folks. And I've already done a whole video on that topic before. In fact, I've done several videos on detransitioners before, and I'll link those down below. But let me restate a few things about detransitioners here. Detransitioners are people who either are trans or thought they were trans, but started to go down a transition pathway with things like hormones, changing how they're viewed by society, or even having surgeries, but then realizing that that's not what they wanted and trying to go back for numerous different reasons. And detransitioners actually make up an insanely small percentage of the transgender population as a whole.
Green,
as I said before, in the United States, there are estimated to be about 1.
We're back to green. No comment chick is back to green on Shinigami Eyes, right?
1.4 million.
Oh my god, no chat. I was never read.
People. But in 2015,
oh
a
my
survey
god,
by the
I just
National
thought
Center
of
for
holy
Transgender
shit.
Equity found that only 8% of trans folks reported detransitioning. And of that 8%, 62% said they only detransitioned temporarily due to issues like cost or discrimination that they faced in the workplace.
It shouldn't be, that shouldn't actually be an issue, chat. That should never be an issue.
Literally only 0.4% of respondents in that study said that they detransitioned because they thought,
oh, what's up? Women's rights were like an awesome idea. What's going on?
Transition wasn't right for them. A 2018 study in the Netherlands found that only 1.9% of adolescents who started puberty transitioned when they got older. A 50-year-long Swedish study published in 2010 found that only 2% of folks regretted transitioning. So even if we take the highest number of those studies, 2%, that means that only 2% of trans people, who make up only
but also, meow,
0.8% of the US population, is actually facing harm because of detransitioning. So this idea that detransitioners are a huge issue that we should focus on is kind of bunk. I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about detransitioners or try to lower that number, but what I am saying—
oh my god, yeah, no, it's a weird thing too, because like, so there was like an author, it's like a journalist who wrote a profile where they went around and interviewed a bunch of detransitioners, right? And a lot of these people ended up retransitioning, and they never went back to like do a follow-up, right? So they left people with the position, with the, you know, idea that, you know, this is a thing that happens, and people are just like, okay, nope, this was a mistake, nope, happier in my birth gender, right? And that's not generally what happens. It's much more people going back in the closet. That's what a lot of detransition amounts to, right? That their social space isn't safe for them to be who they are.
Is to focus on them as like a big issue that really is important to the trans community in terms of
how we
talk about trans health and trans issues.
Yada yada dawa.
Not so much. Again, I care about detransitioners and I don't want them to have to go through any harm, but they should not be the main focus or reason why we deny transgender healthcare, as Schreier implies. And even within that, the harm that detransitioners face is often overblown by Schreier and people like her. In fact, the ability to go from learning about transitioning to full-blown surgery is incredibly atypical, even though Schreier says you can do it really quickly. In most cases, most surgeons require that you follow the 1 year on hormones guideline that the WPATH points out. Not to mention, you also need referrals from therapists, 1 to 2 depending on the surgery, which also takes time and money to get. That, and health insurance, which most trans folks who are discriminated against being hired for in higher income employment don't have, also some...
So do you see how the misrepresentation isn't just an obfuscation of the truth, but rather a reversal of the truth? And that reversal of the truth is strategic in order to make a situation that's already very, very hard for trans people even harder. That's the idea, right? You erase the truth and then you reverse it. And you hurt the people that need the most help. That's intentional.
Sometimes won't even cover trans stuff, so trans people, again, who often don't get higher paying jobs, can't even afford these surgeries. So these surgeries that are apparently being handed out like candy, as Schreier implies, don't really happen. And thirdly, few, if anyone, is saying that trans kids should go on hormones, something that could cause irreversible changes to their body, before they're able to make informed decisions. This is a much longer conversation, but most folks advocate simply for puberty blockers, medication that safely blocks puberty onset for kids so they have time to decide to either go through the puberty their body would have them go through, or take hormones that they can consent to later on in their life. It just gives them time to decide. And the puberty that they would go through in their own bodies also would cause irreversible damages to them if they were trans. And if you want to know more about the safety and efficacy of puberty blockers, Mia Mulder, again a wonderful YouTuber, has a great video on that topic that I'll link below. So with almost all of her information, Schreier is either overblowing the problem of detransitioners or actually just stating incorrect facts. And yet, it's being used to fearmonger about the transgender community, to actively try to frame the transgender community as harming trans kids, or just harming kids in general. Do you see how these points are starting to be connected?
Well, and it's a lot like the homophobic trope of recruitment that was used to slander gays back in the 1970s and 80s.
She's connected this first point that she made in the first half of the video, this whole idea of, oh look, aren't there so many trans kids coming out now, and they're not actually trans, and it's okay if you don't justify them being trans because you're a parent who cares about them, and there's totally accurate scientific information that says that them being trans is probably not the case. But these YouTubers and people talking about transition,
these influencers,
issues, they're just trying to convince them that they're trans. They're trying to just get them in because it's the hip new thing, and then they're...
That's because we got an affiliate code, right? We make money off of that shit. Yeah, what did you think? Yeah, of course. We got an affiliate code. That's what it is. It's an affiliate
harming them. They're
position.
Them. They're trying to...
It's a pyramid
cause
scheme.
All this
oh my god, no.
Don't even to them. That's the narrative
even.
that she takes us on. And yet none of it is actually based
I shouldn't even joke about this shit, chat.
Like,
I shouldn't even
base
joke.
assumptions that she's putting out there. And I'll come back to that in a second, but I want to finish out Abigail's video because she doesn't just stop there. She actually says you should do something about this.
So how do you protect your daughter from being drawn into this dangerous and growing trend? First, limit their exposure to social media as much as you can. Several academic studies have already linked the alarming rates of anxiety and depression to young girls' punishing experience on social media, a place that often makes...
So the idea being that anxiety and depression are going to make an otherwise cis girl want to undergo inappropriate... No, what the hell? Like, what? No.
Them feel sad, unattractive, and alone. Second,
That's why they think that, oh my God, this is so messed up. Like, there's some trans guys out there watching this, and I know you all are laughing so hard.
oppose the teaching of gender ideology in your kid's school. In California, gender identity education begins in kindergarten and proceeds.
Yeah, remove all social contacts, like cut them off from the world and enmesh them in a cult.
Through high school.
That's how you keep your kids safe.
The theme is that kids' gender identity is totally independent of their physical sex and something that only they can know. Schools can and should insist that every child be treated respectfully without sowing gender confusion in an entire student population. Third, and most importantly, remember that a teenager is still just a teenager. You don't have to agree with every identity proclamation your daughter comes up with. Knowledge of her identity will develop over time. Until then, being the adult in the relationship is the most loving thing you can do. I'm Abigail Schreier, author of Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our...
It's like Beatlemania. That's what it is. It's like Beatlemania. There's these like there's these K-pop groups of trans guys, and they're going around just like the Beatles, and it's just, that's what everybody wants to be, the K-pop trans Beatles. That's what's going on, Abigail. You got it right on the, yeah, that's
daughters.
She don't miss.
Praeger University.
First, she says,
Abigail don't miss.
1, limit your kids' use of social media. And this is something that I actually think
blue is for boys, pink is for... Oh my God, yeah.
Can kind of agree on to an extent. There are a lot of studies on how things like Instagram and Facebook can lead to depression and anxiety in kids, especially those assigned female at birth, because it sets things like unrealistic body standards and such. However, I don't think the complete removal of social media from kids' lives is the right answer, because a lot of kids now socialize on social media. And I think there's a lot of impetus and responsibility that lies on social media companies to fix the problem, but I do also understand that a balance is needed. And as a parent, that's up to you to make that balance, and I understand that maybe saying less social media can be the right answer in certain cases. But the real issue comes in the second part that Abigail proposes, where Abigail says to oppose gender ideology. This is exactly where I wanted us to reach, because the way Abigail has framed this whole issue is to try to get parents to feel like it's safe and, more importantly, right for their child to not understand or be exposed to gender issues or gender topics when it comes to trans issues. That to not expose their child to this is not only safe, but it's the right thing to do. When I hope I've at least illustrated in this video how dangerous that actually is for kids, and how it's based on deliberately obfuscating or hiding facts, and selectively presenting other ones. Having a kid who actually is trans not be able to come out and talk about it in a safe and positive way is harming them. It can lead them to have suicidal thoughts, or have them be depressed or face other mental health issues, especially down the line. Even further, it can mean their parents don't see them. It makes them feel like they're isolated and lonely from the people that should be caring about them the most, because they're not able to talk about it. I'm not advocating that kids go through irreversible surgeries or things like that. What I am advocating for is listening to them, letting them talk about it, instead of just denying it outright with bunk science. And also
no, it's more like one of those candy bar sales, like
maybe using things like puberty blockers, which are safe and reversible, in order to allow them time to talk about it more, to think about it more, to make the decisions that they want to make down the line, so that
wait, is it?
They can avoid that depression and suicidal thoughts down the line. Even further, I think in general, kids are much more capable of understanding and coping with topics than many of us would expect. Hell, Mr. Rogers of all people understood this.
When children see and hear about frightening things, it's best for them to have an adult close by. Somebody who loves them and can put their arm around them.
Mr. Rogers talked to kids about death and traumatic events like 9/11 in his show. He understood that kids may not have the experience, but they can understand. And they do have just as much emotional depth as any of us. They just don't have the words to describe it, which is why giving them time to understand and vocalize and learn about it is important, and also
you watched a TikTok video, now you're trans.
Exposing them to more of these thoughts and ideas can help them understand. But all that is kind of beside the point, because again, I want to focus in on what this video is doing, what Abigail Schreier and Praeger's video is doing. As I said, it's been used to frame gender ideology as bad and something that actively harms kids. It sets up this whole idea of the think of the kids, think of the children. We've seen it so many times throughout history. Don't let your kids near gay people, they'll hurt them. Don't let your white children near the black kids, because they'll have a bad influence on them. or it'll upset them if we expose them to issues of race at a young age. The same dynamic is being used
It's
here
going to
for trans
surprise,
people. Don't let
yeah.
your kids near trans people or trans issues. They'll try
Or
and give
maybe
them a
not.
surgery just like a lollipop. You see how this is starting to paint anyone who talks about trans issues, even trans issues that are based on science and study, as being deliberately harmful. As Giulio Serrano states,
it provides political cover for those who wish to roll back trans rights in healthcare. For instance, anti-trans groups can cite ROGD as a rationale for excluding trans kids and censoring trans-related media and resources under the presumption that these things are causing RODG in other children, and limiting or eliminating the ability to transition under the presumption that some kids who seek this out are merely ROGD and or because ROGD is a brand new medical condition that will require years of further study. And if anyone objects to such measures, these ROGD proponents can conveniently claim that they are not anti-trans. After all, they acknowledge the existence of transgender people and gender dysphoria, in some cases at least. It's just that they are acting primarily out of concern for ROGD kids.
and we've seen this happen directly, as states like Texas and several others have attempted to outlaw trans-affirming healthcare for kids. For example, the Texas law would outlaw puberty blockers for trans kids, but only trans kids. The same drugs would be allowed to anyone else, as the law states explicitly. So why are these drugs only considered harmful for trans kids but no one else? The answer is, it's because they're trans, and no other reason. This rhetoric is directly being used to target trans people specifically. Puberty blockers have been and will continue to be used on cisgender children to help them conform to what society expects of them and their gender, but not for trans kids. As we saw in PragerU's video, Schreier vilified gender clinics. Now, not only are there not a large number of gender clinics in the US and UK as Schreier implies, the small number of which has led to the incredibly long wait times for trans people to get needed medical care that I mentioned before, but these clinics also deal with other aspects of trans healthcare like mental health or basic physical care from a trans understanding doctor, something that we should be giving more access to, not less.
Oh my god.
But because of the vilification of gender clinics...
Chat, I want to make you cringe, okay? Now, content creators, we're cringy people, okay, just by nature, right? We just we don't interact with other people in a normal way, okay? So here's what I'm noticing, okay? I feel like, and I've heard other streamers say this, that if you see a therapist, you almost need to see a therapist who is a streamer or something. Because there's no way to how half of talking to a therapist is explaining what the fuck is going on in your life, and it's just oh my god, can you imagine trying to explain? Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty cringe though. I think there's only so many spots on Dr. K's stream, and I
by folks like Schreier, we've seen the closing of these clinics around the country in the United States and in the UK, such as the recent closure of the only gender clinic in Texas due to pushback caused by the exact misinforming narratives espoused in PragerU's video.
So Dr. K, call me.
It's horrible and prevents trans folks from getting the life-saving healthcare that they need. Even further, PragerU's whole video has consistently leaned into this idea that the only real trans folks are, for the most part, those who are seen as boys. Trans women like myself. This video doesn't actively state that, but it starts to imply it. It delegitimizes trans men quite often. It's starting to imply that trans men, those who were seen as girls initially but transitioned to being seen as men, we don't need to believe them as much as we believe the boys who come out as trans women. Maybe there are a few trans men who are really trans men, but most girls who are thinking that they're trans men are probably wrong. And there is precedent why that exact idea grows into something even bigger, leaning into cultural stigmas that trans women are deceptive, intentionally predatory, and villainous, that we're trying to get more people over to our side. And I did a whole video on that topic as well. I know I'm linking to a ton of videos, but I promise you they're all worth watching if you are interested in those specific topics. But importantly, Schreier's video doesn't actively state that, but again, it's starting to lay that groundwork. It's laying down the track to get them there. It's trying to take folks who are well-meaning and caring about trans people and begin to walk them down the path of seeing trans women as deceptive. Even further, let's talk about part 3 of Schreier's actions.
Most importantly, remember that a teenager is still just a teenager. You don't have to agree with every identity proclamation your daughter comes up with. Knowledge of her identity will develop over time. Until then, being the adult in the relationship is the most loving thing you can do.
This is saying you don't need to listen to your kids, specifically if they're girls, when they tell you that there's something that they're feeling about being trans. She's telling you to dismiss hearing your kids out. And again, this is interesting that Schreier is focusing this on who she says are girls, trans men. Because trans men, even in adulthood today, are often infantilized and often told that their identities aren't legitimate. As trans man and author Jay Hume stated,
"As a trans man, I am, and always will be, belittled, disrespected, spoken down to, and patronized by transphobes. After all, they think I have been brainwashed and fooled into thinking I'm a man. What could I possibly know? What value could my words or experience possibly have?" This is, again, anti-feminist. The idea that trans men are just foolish women whose words cannot have any value is deeply troubling, and mirrors patriarchal behaviors towards silly girls, no matter how old or how accomplished the women in question actually are.
Again, this video by Schreier isn't outright stating this, but it's laying that groundwork. You can dismiss your daughter's claims, it says, because that's the right thing to do. You're actually being kind and caring when you do so. Again, setting the seeds in motion to further infantilize and delegitimize trans men's identities down the road. That you can dismiss them, ignore them, because how could they possibly understand their own bodies, lives, and feelings? So often, when you find people on YouTube or other areas breaking down the rhetoric and misinformation of transphobes, you often find that we do it directly targeting the people making the rhetoric. And rightfully so, much of the time. Folks like Abigail Schreier, along with many of those who espouse similar ideologies, those who we would call TERFs, actively are attacking transgender rights, demonizing trans women, and infantilizing trans men, and often ignoring non-binary folks, or considering them trans women if they were assigned male at birth and treat them accordingly. Groups like TERFs actively campaign with right-wing hate groups like the Heritage Foundation, and have had their protests supported by groups like the Proud Boys, leading to violence at those protests. Vocal TERFs like Posey Parker or Abigail Schreier have continually been platformed by right-wing.
This is such a weird thing. It's really strange to me, but at the same time not, how hatred brings together, you know, the whole horseshoe theory thing. That's bullshit. The idea that, like, you know, that both sides of the spectrum meet on the, like, other side of the, I don't know, right? The horseshoe theory, right? Like, it's like, I mean, this is a horseshoe theory, but this is just like people that are obviously on opposite sides of the ideological spectrum. Like, they got a common enemy and they're gonna fuck them over. And that's how that shit works, right? It is the strangest thing in the world to see dedicated, lifelong leftists work with, you know, and I mean, like, I get it that, like, you know, these, you know, TERFs, they're not good leftists. They're not good comrades. They don't have real solidarity, right? But at least in their minds, right? They, you know, like, I don't know, just the fact that people will go over and make common cause with people so far on the right that when it comes to hate, right?
And alt-right groups. People like TERFs and other alt-right groups are active hate groups and require being pushed back against directly and vocally. And I have zero compunction about that. Videos and rhetoric that go after these people and debunk and shame them, I think, are good. And note, by the way, that I say shame, not harass or attack. There are times for violence, but that's a different discussion, and I don't think harassing folks online really helps anybody. Shaming them, yes. Harassing them, calling them terrible names, things like that, that I think less so. But the important thing that I think we often forget is that these groups like TERFs are very, very good about wielding lack of awareness, misinformation, and selective facts in order to trick those who don't.
Decontextualization. That is the calling card of a sussy baka, is decontextualization. People that are afraid of seeing stuff placed in context because it breaks their narrative. It snaps it in two and exposes it for the lie that it is.
Know better. You see how much research and information I've had to present in order to discuss a 5-minute video that PragerU created about trans people?
How bad is it for Posey Parker? Oh wait, Parker Posey's a real person too, and Posey Parker. Oh my god, yeah. Wait, maybe they're like each other's shadow. Maybe they're opposites.
When they're able to just simply present their cherry-picked facts and leave huge swaths of information out just in order to get their point across in, again, 5 minutes. And PragerU is far from the only place where this happens. It happens in things like journalism, especially in the UK, where TERFs are often the de facto voice of feminism and where journalists turn to talk about feminist issues. They get to frame the issue as TERFs or women's issues versus trans issues. They get to frame the discussion. when that isn't actually the case. It's not women's issues versus trans issues. It's talking about trans issues as a whole, gender issues as a whole, and not necessarily an adversarial relationship.
Tell me about it.
Relationship, but how we can coexist. But TERFs don't want to frame it that way. They want to frame it in that adversarial way, like Schreier is pointing out here. But they do so not by actively spewing hate in these journalistic articles. They don't try to make their words sound outright harmful or hateful. But their information is still demeaning, and they know how to package it in language that sounds reasonable. It allows them to manipulate the feelings of those they interact with, because facts do care about your feelings, and feelings do care about facts. It's just all about what facts are presented. Zoe B, by the way, another fantastic YouTuber, talks about that.
In what context, right? Because you can present two things in the context of each other that aren't related, right? And you can do it. That is the number one way that good people get fooled by this shit, right?
That dynamic, and I'll link to it below. But it's important to note that they are being persuasive. They are being persuasive by hiding their transphobic rhetoric underneath something that seems empathetic. As a YouTuber, I'm often criticized for being too empathetic to groups like TERFs, and I understand that criticism. I see why people worry that I might be giving too much credence or empathy to folks who are actively trying to harm the transgender community. But I show them empathy not for their sake, because they certainly have little empathy for me. I mean, take one look at any TERF board online that discusses me or mentions me, and believe
What's up? Over it.
Believe me, I've seen them, and you will see nothing but insulting me, insulting my looks, insulting my name, misgendering and dead-naming me, and just ultimately just trying to hurt me. These are the same people, too, that, by the way, have doxed me and sent me death threats, and have whole threads devoting to finding out every single piece of information about me. Again, I've seen them. I know they exist.
Listen, whoever did this shit, okay, you are super meanie butts.
You can find them if you want to look for them.
Super
and I
meanie
hold
butts.
little empathy for the people who do this. But I do
meanie
try
butts.
to empathize with them because I want to understand where they come from. Because I want to know why they believe what they do and how they were
Why are you meanie butts? That's what I want to know.
persuaded to believe
Who hurt you, meanie butt?
that. And so often when I do that, I often find the same answer. They actually want to care for others. Sure, some of them are just trolls trying to do it just because they want to hurt other people, but most people want to care about people. Most of them don't believe that they're doing harm, but instead believe they're doing good. And they wield that same narrative that was used to persuade them in order to persuade.
What is this stream about? It's about me building up power for my Genki Dama back here. My Genki Dama that I'm gonna use in a battle against another Persona user. Yeah?
The general public. And most often
from a lesser Shin Megami series than my own.
Especially for TERFs.
How about you?
That feeling of righteousness comes from a place of personal pain that is ultimately being directed in an extremely misguided way. But it's also similar to what PragerU is trying to do to others. I think most people actually do care, or at least want to care about trans people. They want to care about the
Genki
folks around them, to care about their kids who may be trans, to maybe care about trans adults. They aren't evil, but those who do wish to harm trans people are extremely persuasive.
No, we got finished watching the reading about the TERF manifesto that Richard Dawkins signed on to and tried to get other people to sign, and we're finishing. This is a video by Jesse Agender about PragerU and how PragerU spreads transphobia through their well, whatever the hell you call that thing that PragerU does. That's how they spread it.
And I think it's useful to keep that in mind. It's important to make sure we understand
brainworms. That's what I mean. That was the word I was looking for. Through brainworms. That's right.
Understand the narratives that people put out about trans people and understand why they are persuasive. And know that not every person who is persuaded by them holds transphobic views actively or has active malice towards the trans community, but has been brought there slowly and surely through misinformation. And it's only with caring and patience that we can either bring them back or...
Like, my theory is that there's some character like Bobbity that creates TERFs by enchanting them, and that all TERFs secretly have M's on their foreheads from being under the control of the wizard Bobbity.
Stop them from going down that road.
Oh my god, I gotta stop talking about Dragon Ball.
Creators in leftist spaces like...
I'm gonna expose myself as a fake weeb.
Like myself often tend to realize that we're speaking to a mostly leftist audience. Folks who already agree with us and who are primed to understand our arguments. Yet where I think we often fail, and I include myself in this criticism, by the way, and somewhere where the right and folks like PragerU often succeed, is that we fail to be good to speaking to people who are just entering the conversation, asking questions that may come across as uninformed and ignorant, because they are, but are honest and legitimate and not coming from a place of hatred, but coming from a place of just wanting to know, because they haven't been exposed to it. A thing that we often forget, especially in online spaces, is that ignorance isn't always coming from malice. Sometimes it's just coming from ignorance.
Can we talk about Ranma 1/2 instead? Is that where the, like, hot water, what is it? The hot water, like...
And the right knows that. They know that ignorance isn't malice, but they know that it can be turned that way for their benefit. So I think we...
Oh yeah, that's the sad thing about ignorance, is even though it's not malice, when you're hurt by it, it's identical, right? It doesn't matter that you didn't have any malice. It doesn't matter that you didn't realize that you were being used. It doesn't matter that you don't realize that you are literally, not literally, figuratively, a trophy on a right-wing mantle. It still hurts the same. The effects are the same, as if, you know, your interests were in line with those, you know, who were actually had malice, right? That is the sad thing about ignorance. And it's even sadder when that ignorance is willful. It's even sadder when it's from a friend.
Need to be better at having conversations with these people and having empathy for them where they're at. And by the way, I'm not saying this is a one-size-fits-all tactic. First off, it shouldn't be required of trans people to empathize with people who don't understand us. They should be the ones trying to understand us by actually talking to us. But sadly, most people won't.
I need a sensu bean. Can chat get me a sensu bean?
Instead, most people will just look up an issue on YouTube and maybe they'll stumble across something like my video. Or, since PragerU has more money to spend on advertising, they'll stumble across PragerU's video. And then they'll be taken down that narrative road that I talked about. It shouldn't be on us, but sadly it oftentimes is. Not every trans person should be an educator, but if you wish to be, know that sometimes people start at other places. Start at places that you
and
would
isn't
consider
there somebody
to be
named
harmful
Shampoo?
or ignorant. And also know that some people will take advantage of you knowing that some people will start at different places and they'll try to sea lion you, asking you a bunch of questions made to waste your time because they know that you want to be caring and kind, and so they'll just try and take up your space and time by asking those questions. So know when to look for those people as well. And also know, if this is a tactic that you try to do, if you do try to talk to people where they're at, just know that some people, like the most vehement of TERFs who are just here to attack trans people, need to be told to fuck off. It causes us too much harm personally to try to reason with them. I wish I could. I wish I could spend as much time as possible talking with them, getting them through.
Oh my
it,
god, she's even more like me than me, chat.
Be open and emotional and vulnerable.
Chat. Jesse Gender is like more NCC than NCC. What the fuck? Oh my god. I mean, like, I've spent times talking to, like, trans meds, right? Trying to be like, but yeah, like, I mean, I can see that you have a lot of self-hate and that must be really hard. And they hate it, but I don't know, like, but wow, to talk to TERFs?
As best I can, and it can work sometimes.
Shampoo
you can
turns
see
into a
even
cat.
the most hardened alt-right person
Oh my
can
god.
come to love and care and come to understand that people are just people. But
Even
that
the
takes a
rarest
lot
of
time
Pepes
and
can
effort
understand
and
that.
willingness to put yourself in danger. And it's not something that all of us have the
Yeah,
ability
be careful
to
around
do
those rare
or wish
Pepes,
to do.
chat. I
So
don't know.
that sadly you can't save everybody. Sometimes you just need to tell people to fuck off. Sad, but true. Something I wrestle with a lot. I also by no means wish to tone police. If you wish to be someone who doesn't want to do any of this stuff, that's great. Again, I said this is just one of many tactics that I think we should use, but I do think it is a tactic that is useful and important. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all situation, but we need to be aware that this is a tactic that we need to use, that we do need to meet people where they are at, that we need to try to care about people who may be harmful to us or may be on a track to be harmful to us in order to try to stop them from going down that road. We can help them and we can figure out how they got where they are now, because only then can we help them walk back and walk a better road of compassion for all of us. And that is always my rule. to be compassionate for as many people as I possibly can with the energy that I have. And with that, I finish off my tea. I say thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.
Oh my god. That's some Star Trek right there. Star Trek with an A. No, just kidding, chat. I know it's with an E. I like to pretend to. Oh my god. What? Oh my god.
I couldn't do this without you. Go, go, Patreons. You help.
Meow. Oh my god, chat. I almost like want to watch wait, I might have to do this as a video. I might have to do slurp. I know, right? It's good to the last slurp. Yeah. Good luck on your homework. I almost want to watch the like red ape family thing, but I don't think I can do it as like I don't think I can do it as react content, right? Because it's like an actual like series. It's like it'd be like watching an episode of JoJo, right? You gotta cut it up into little clips and stuff, right? I think that's how you do it. So I might be coming out with a Red Ape react that'll be short and hopefully funny. Yeah, unlike the show, which is, well, it's short, but it's definitely not very funny. So that's what's so funny about it, is that it's not funny, and it's just NFT bros and the rest. Star Trek is the red letter media meme. Oh my god, so that's legal. Okay, well, as long as I get away with it. As long as I get away with it, it's legal. That's what we've decided. That's what we've said. Chat, thank you so much for spending the evening with me, and I hope you've learned something. I know I've learned something. I wouldn't have known how toxic that Richard Dawkins thing was otherwise, right? Thank you for the people that, you know, translated that. I want to say translated. I want to, oh my god, Jody, I'm so sorry. I'm closing down stream just as you get here. Oh, whoa. Meow. But thank you everybody for being here, and sorry about dropping the frames. It looks like we picked them up on the other side, so we're good. All right. I will see you later. Oh, and look for more, prepared, content. Like, you know, video essays. Yeah. That's coming your way. Bye-bye.